Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 90 of my Guild Wars 2 Let's Play series. Today should be a fun episode because while we are going to do a lot of random things later on, I want to spend the first good chunk of this episode walking everybody through the concept of gearing out your character and putting on a good build, where we are going to go over a lot of stuff, go over the basics, go over some different strategies that you can consider, and I'll link some resources down in the description if you want to get more in depth into it. But I'm basically going to start off by explaining kind of some basic elements that are going to help you with the story and open world, which are the things that I am mostly focused on in this Let's Play series. And then if you're wanting to take this a step further, you're going to want to look at specific builds for PvP, world versus world, raiding, fractals of the mist, etc., where you want to consider better builds that are stronger and more specialized for certain things in order to perform as best as you can in situations where you probably want to perform as best as you can, in PvP or very difficult raids where you're working with other people. And I've been working on a little bit of a build here and there as I've been playing through the game, and I'm currently at this, and I'm going to change some of this up. Where when it comes to the basic idea of build crafting, there are a lot of different avenues you can take. You can try to maximize damage, you could try to maximize survivability, etc. Typically you want to try to maximize damage, and then when you are doing open world stuff, you want to take into consideration the concept of survivability as well. Where I really want to build this character around a central theme, and over the years as I play this character, I'm going to sway here and there just to try out some different playstyles and whatnot, but I'm really going to try to stick to a central theme. And I'm playing on a Necromancer, and I really want to try to become a Death Knight type of character, where we are a very powerful, very burly, very strong, tanky knight type character who can deal a lot of strong damage and just take a lot of damage ourselves. So I'm going to be trying to create a build around that central philosophy. And with that central philosophy, I'm going to go ahead and pick an elite specialization. Now we have all these skills and specs and whatnot that we can train, where we have spite and curses that we can go ahead and just train right here, since I have so many hero points from working on map completion and from leveling to level 80. Where once you reach level 80, you get enough hero points to train every single skill and every single specialization, which leaves you with leftover hero points that you can then use on elite specializations. And with the specializations, we can go ahead and put 3 in here if we wanted, where I currently have soul reaping, where we can go ahead and select a few different things. I think having Shroud 1 inflict vulnerability would be good here. And then here, I'm going to leave it at that. And then over here, I'm going to leave it at that as well. Doomfire is very nice, but with the 3 selections I made here, they are really focused on the concepts of dealing damage in the form of power damage. Because when we look at DPS builds in Guild Wars 2, there are 2 different types of DPS players. There are condition damage players, players who would throw down a bunch of conditions like we have with Plaguelands here, and just deal a ton of burning and poison and torment and whatnot. And then just power DPS players who just deal a ton of straight up damage with their abilities and not from any conditions. And with going for a Death Knight type of build, we are definitely going to be using some conditions here and there, but I want to really focus on the concept of power. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pick Spite. I feel where there are a ton of power builds that you can consider playing, and I'll go ahead and link some websites down in the description that you can follow. And this is probably going to be very close or maybe exactly the same as some of the builds that you can find, where Reaper's Might is very nice there. I think this damage increase is going to be nice for us. Maybe Bitter Chill if we want to try to throw as much of vulnerability on as possible, where we have a ton of sources of vulnerability. This directly increases our power, which is good. And this is very nice. And this one is even better, where we just deal 20% more damage to any enemies that are 50% or less health. which is insane. But going back to what I was talking about with our hero points, if you take a look at our map completion, I've gotten 153 hero points, as you can see right here, and I can get to up to 189, and then there's one from Living Road Season 1 that we can get, and then there's 12 from Road vs. Road, if I recall correctly, which we can look at in the future, which allows us to partially complete an elite specialization, where typically when you're doing elite specializations, you want to go to one of the first 3 expansion maps of the Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire, or End of Dragons, and complete hero challenges there, which will grant you 10 hero points. And it might be nice for you to skip ahead in order to just get one of those elite specs, but you know, Living Road Season 1, Living Road Season 2, and like the base game were designed without elite specialization in mind, so like you're going to do pretty okay in the open road up to that point. And I'm also someone who's going in chronological order, so I'm not going to skip ahead, and we're going to go ahead and have a partial elite specialization, because I could put one of these 3 specializations into the slot here, but I think we are going to do much better if you pick one of these 3. And I'm going to be looking at all of them, but I want to really focus on, for pretty much this entire Let's Play series, the Reaper specialization, because this fits my vibe perfectly, where we can learn how to wield a greatsword, so we can become basically a Death Knight, or a Shroud Knight, where Death Shroud is replaced with Reaper's Shroud, where we just become like a form of a Reaper and just become Death incarnate. So I'm going to go ahead and train Greatsword Proficiency, which is going to give us the Adept Reaper achievement, and with that we are going to get a free exotic greatsword, which is nice. So we can go ahead and just have this greatsword right off the bat. And then once we get to Heart of Thorns, we can look at some different things where we can eventually create an Ascended greatsword, which looks very cool. I love the skin so much, but this is going to require us to do a bunch of Heart of Thorns stuff, so this is pretty much going to stay in my achievements page for a very long time. But let's go ahead and put in as many points as I can, which it looks like I'm very close to being able to get to here. So as I complete more stuff in order, we can get to this trait, but I can come to here and I can learn all of this stuff. So if I come into the build here, and if I come into the elite specialization tree here and put Reaper, my scythe, it thirsts, I can go ahead and have at least 2 traits selected, where I'm going to be missing out on this minor trait for a little bit, and then the Grandmaster trait, and I'm going to be missing out on some skills, but we have a lot of stuff available for us right off the bat, which is going to be very nice. And it feels really cool to now have an elite specialization on a character after 90 whole episodes. And I was debating if I actually wanted to do this like this early, or if I want to wait until we got to Heart of Thorns, but I feel like this makes a lot of sense. But now we have to pick some of our traits. So Shouts now siphon health. This effect is increased on foes in melee range. Create a Nova at the target that damages and chills nearby foes. Critical hits against chilled foes cause an explosion that chills adjacent foes, so you can basically combo off that. Or Relentless Pursuit reduces duration of movement impairing conditions. Additional reduction while in a Reaper's Shroud. So this might be really nice utility for like the open road and whatnot. But I think this is going to deal a ton of damage. So if we're ever struggling, I think we can swap to this one. And then I don't think I really want this unless like we're really struggling there. Then whenever you inflict fear, you also chill, so that's a nice combo there. And then we can only pick from 1 or 2 here, where this one seems really nice. Striking a foe with vulnerability increases their critical hit chance. But this one, striking foes within the range threshold, deals increased strike damage and heals you for a portion of the damage dealt. So that is insane. The range threshold is 300 range, and since we are going to be using a greatsword, we're pretty much always going to be in that range. So this is just going to give us consistent healing and consistently more damage on top of it. And then striking a chilled foe grants might and life force. Yeah, I think I want that, which are all of the options that we have now. And if we double check our training tree, we can go ahead and train more as we progress, where we are going to reach a cap before we get to Heart of Thorns as I finish the Ore hero challenges and if I go and grab the road versus road ones, we might be able to get to like up to here or something. And just to reiterate, there are a lot of different builds that you can make for all the different professions, and you can take some time to do some build crafting yourself and try to come up with like fun and unique ideas and then test them out in the open world or in like specific things. Or if you're someone who likes to copy builds, once again, I'll throw some links down in the description. But traits are only part of the build, where we also have skills that we need to take care of, and we also have to take care of our weapons and armor. So now we have a lot of different options here, which I might go ahead and take some recommended builds that are related to like Power Reaper, and I might swap some stuff out as we like play the game, because I might want to take into consideration some factors present in the open world, where I want to make sure I have like some stun breaks, and maybe like having some condi clears and whatnot might be nice every now and then. Mostly like a stun break would be really nice if I'm being honest. But we also have some brand new Reaper skills that we can look at, and we're going to unlock more in the future, where Reapers gain access to shout abilities, so a completely new type of spell for necromancers, where we see like guardians and whatnot have shouts already. But let's go ahead, pick that, and then I'm going to go ahead and follow a build here where we can keep our Well of Suffering because this deals so much damage. But then we can consider this a Well of Darkness as well, which is going to be very similar to the Well of Suffering as well, but it inflicts some chilled, which is going to be really nice for combining with our traits and whatnot. But I'm also very tempted to keep Spectral Armor, or potentially Spectral Walk might be nice. I think this is like a double stun break. So let's go ahead, just throw this on for now, and then I'm probably going to swap this out in the future. And then this is not good for us at all because it is a condition ability, and we have two different shouts here that we can pick from, where we can damage foes and transfer conditions, or we can damage a lot more foes and deal additional damage and gain additional wounds and striking foes within the melee range. So let's go ahead and pick that. And I've been rocking the Plague Lands ability, but I feel like this is not going to be super beneficial for us. And having Chill to the Bone might be what I want, especially because it deals a ton of Defiance damage, which is going to be something that I want. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and pick Summon Flesh Golem, I think. And now we just have a ton of new abilities that we can use. And with that, we also have the new Reaper's Shroud. And this is similar in concept to the Shroud that we have been using in the game thus far, but it's like a lot tankier and it's more melee focused instead of being like spellcaster focused. Which if we come into here really quickly, I'll just go ahead and glance at like all the different abilities because they are really cool, and we get an incredible scythe. And just to look at some of the animations here, we have a lot of cool stuff, and this one is a fun melee ability which is going to be super beneficial for us with getting around, especially in the base game where in story missions we don't have access to mounts. But now we can go ahead and consider our weapons, which I'm going to go ahead and get into some more specifics of like gearing our character in just a moment, but I just want to consider what type of weapons we would even want to use with this build, which we have our Reaper's greatsword here, which we can customize the stats of, and we have three options here. So power, precision, ferocity. This is berserker stats, and when we are looking at power DPS builds, we are really wanting to look at berserker stats, which if we were looking at condition DPS builds, we would want to look at some other stuff like viper stats, and there's actually a lot more like variation for like condi DPS builds. But pretty much with power builds, we want berserkers. But berserker stats basically makes you super glassy, is that the right term? Where you can basically like die super easily as you have no defenses and you're entirely focused on offense. And this is great in like fractals and raids and whatnot, where you have dedicated players who are trying to keep you alive, so you don't have to worry about having like defensive stats where you really want to focus on dealing as much damage as possible. But for us who are really focused on the open world and story, we want to consider some other stats as well. So this power, precision, toughness with the knights is kind of nice, but I think I want to go ahead and take the berserker's greatsword right here, and we can go ahead and equip this. So let's go ahead, throw that on, and we now have a greatsword equipped as a necromancer, which is incredible. And we have a ton of new abilities that we can go ahead and look at. I love Gravedigger so much, but Death Spiral is very, very cool. And we have Nightfall here, and then Grasping Darkness. Just so cool. It came out in front of us there. And then when it comes to our other weapons, there are some different things we can consider. We could try to pick a weapon that is going to give us a ton of damage alongside our greatsword, but I think I want to mostly focus on using the greatsword for combat, and I want to have our other weapons set mostly there for utility. So we have a bunch of different weapon options as a necromancer, but for now I think I want to pick an axe like I've been using, and I want to pick a warhorn just for us to have fun with, which the warhorn is really nice because it's going to grant us swiftness so we can move around a little bit faster, and it also like heals us just a tiny bit. And then we have this fear, which is going to give us a little bit of a stun break in case we need some extra stun break, and then this applies cripple, which will help out with that as well. And then the ghastly claws is like a nice little boost of damage, probably not as much as our greatsword, but it's still going to be nice for us. But the big thing about the ghastly claws and the rending claws is that we can use these abilities from 900 range, which if you look at our greatsword here, the range is 130. So we have to be like right up against our enemies, which we do often want to be because we have a bunch of traits that are related to that. But there are a lot of situations where we might not be within 130 range of our enemy units specifically, where maybe an enemy is running away and we're chasing after them and they're like really far in front of us, or maybe we're wanting to like pull an enemy from like far away without trying to grab like attention or like other things, or walk into a specific situation, or maybe the enemy we are fighting is doing a mechanic where they're like blowing up everything at their feet, so we have to like be away from them, but then we can't deal damage to them while we are away from them, so then we can swap to our axe in order to deal damage while we are away. And then when they're doing that mechanic, we can run back in and swap back to our greatsword. And there's like more situations like that where when it comes to stuff like raids and fractals of the mist, you want to consider like the specific, raids and fractals that you're doing. But for the open world, it is nice to have a lot of options here, and I'll probably change this up in the future as we look at stuff. But now it comes to one of the biggest aspects, and that is getting good gear, because everything that I currently have right now, which if you look at these strong daggers, they're really bad, is just stuff that I picked up as we have been progressing through the game. So now it's time to get some good weapons and armor, which we currently have one pretty decent thing right here with this Berserker's Reaper Greatsword, which is very, very nice. But we have a lot of stuff that we can consider, and I'm going to go ahead and go over a few different ways that you can gear, which we have all of these different qualities of gear. And when it comes to being level 80, there are 3 qualities you want to consider. One is exotic gear, and this used to be the best gear in the game way back in the day, but it is no longer the best gear in the game, where the best gear is ascended gear, which is decently hard to get, and exotic gear is pretty easy to get, and ascended gear doesn't have too much of an increase over exotic gear, but it is definitely noticeable, especially once you get every single piece upgraded compared to having like every single piece of exotic gear. And then the third quality is legendary gear, which has the same stats as ascended, but it just provides you with a ton of quality of life features, such as the ability to swap your stats for free without having to spend like any gold or anything in order to basically swap those stats. Because as we are gearing a character right now, we want to really consider what type of gear we are going to be picking, because it's going to be difficult for us to swap those stats in the future. And legendary gear is really a big investment where it takes a ton of time and a ton of gold, and I'm probably only ever going to look at one specific legendary for this account. And any legendary making that I do, I really just want to do on my main account if I'm being honest, but I'm definitely going to be looking at ascended gear. But first is exotic gear, and there are a ton of different ways that you can get exotic gear, such as through dungeons, which we have the special dungeon currency, which I actually do not have any of. Even though I've done 7 dungeons, I've only done story dungeons, but if you did explorable mode versions of dungeons, we can buy some dungeon gear, and that is going to provide us with some good quality exotic gear, but that's also going to help us work on a bigger collection where we can unlock every item from a dungeon. But the bigger way to get exotic gear is through the trading post, and right off the bat, this does cost gold, but gold is really easy to get. Where I've just been casually playing over the last 90 episodes and I have 329 gold. And if you come into the Wizard's Vault here, which is a great way to get gold if you complete the daily and the weekly, every day and weekly respectively, you can go ahead and get a ton of astral claim, which can let you get some gold. And I reached level 80 before the newest season came out, so I got a ton of gold that way, which if I now spend a bunch of the astral claim I've just casually gotten by doing my dailies and weeklies, I can go ahead and just buy all of this right here, which if I go ahead use all of this, that's going to increase my gold by 75. And then if I come into the trading post here, I can go ahead and sell one of these, and then I can find it again and then sell the other 59, which that just gave us 100 gold. So if we come into our trading post right here, we now have almost 500 gold, which is a decent amount of gold to have. And now if we come into the trading post, we can start looking at some different options. So looking at armor first, we can go ahead and look at specific pieces of armor, but a big thing that we want to consider is coming into this gear wheel here, and we want to narrow our range. So we are looking for Necromancer armor, that is good, but we want to make sure that we are looking for level 80 armor, so we're going to have our range be from level 80 to level 80. Which if we then come into our rarities, let's go ahead and pick exotic, because this is the best gear that you can buy on the trading post, and we can see some exotic stat gear here. But then we can pick the stats specifically, where there are a lot of different stat combinations, and since we are playing a power based build, we want to look for a power based stat combination. And I'll throw a wiki page down in the description if you want to look at all the different combinations. And the classic power one, as I mentioned earlier, is Berserkers, which is power, precision, ferocity. But I want to do something a little different, where let's go ahead and put power, and then let's put ferocity, and then I'm going to put vitality. And this is going to give us the options for celestial gear if you wanted, but it's also going to give us the option to get Marauders gear if you wanted, or Valkyrie gear. Which, what is Marauders? Power, precision, vitality, ferocity. So that's actually like pretty decent, but I think I really want to go with Valkyrie, which is a power main, and then vitality and ferocity minor, which if you need a refresher, you can come to the attributes here to see what each of these stats does. So, you know, power increases damage, vitality increases maximum health, and then ferocity increases critical damage. So whenever we deal a critical strike, which we have a 28.33% chance of doing based off of our precision, we are going to go ahead and deal more critical damage, which is 152.4% more damage than a normal hit. And we can see a full set of Valkyrie gear right here costs roughly, like, what is that, 8-9 gold, which we have 500 gold, so that's a full set of nice exotic armor for us. But there's also ascended armor, which there are a lot of different ways to get ascended armor in this game, where the biggest way is through crafting, and then you can get some from like raid drops and like fractals and the mist drops, but typically to do those things you do want to have some ascended armor right off the bat. So for players who want to basically like start gearing up with ascended armor, really wanted to take into consideration crafting. So I definitely recommend leveling up your crafting spec and learning how to create some ascended armor that way, which you can find like some more specific like crafting guides. But I want to do things a little bit differently because the Wizard's Vault is incredible, where there are so many different options here, including every season, which is every 3 months, you can get 3 pieces of ascended armor and 1 ascended weapon, which I picked up 3 ascended armor chests last season and 3 this season, and given the fact that there are 6 armor sets, I have a full set of ascended armor just sitting in my bank right here. And I also picked up an ascended weapon, which we can do the same stat thing at the trading post in order to pick up some exotic weapons if we wanted, but we have a free ascended one right here, and I'm really considering what I want for this, but we can go ahead and pick some ascended armor pieces, which we can go ahead and pick 1 of 18, and we are going to want to pick the light ones, which we can see right here. It says heavy, armor class unavailable or unusable by your profession, where we have this one here. Natural footwear, illustrious footwear, collectible, light armor. Let's just go ahead and pick that. So we got a piece of foot armor, and we just got 10 achievement points from doing that, which you can get up to 100 achievement points, plus a choice of an exotic weapon if you collect all 18. But if you then come into here, if we scroll down to here, we can go ahead and get the light chest piece, and then again, and again, we want to get the mask, the pants, and then the final item we have the shoulder armor, and this is a full set of ascended armor, which we can actually equip right now if you wanted. So let's go ahead, throw this on, not like that, whoops, I meant to click there, and then down to here, to all the different pieces. And this is what the basic ascended cloth items look like, which some people like. A lot of people don't like how ascended armor looks, but we can switch that up if you wanted. But the next big thing is to come into customize, and we can go ahead and search for Valkyrie, which I'm going to go ahead and copy paste out. So we have power, vitality, and ferocity, and this step is incredibly important because once we pick a stat here, it's locked, where we can swap the stats in the future by changing the stats in the Mystic Forge, and it costs a bunch of items and it's a little expensive, but typically we want to try to not to do that because, you know, it is expensive and we want to, you know, save our money, and then we could like spend that money on getting different ascended sets, or we can put that towards making a legendary armor. But I'm pretty confident that for what I personally want to do in the game and what I personally want to go for with this build that I'm making is Valkyrie stats, which I partially want to do this because I just want to make my health super high, because having a high health bar is like really cool, and like any video game you do, especially MMOs. Let's go ahead, pick a Valkyrie there. You can see our health just skyrocketed, and our power and ferocity also skyrocketed as well, and we can see just how much it does once we get into combat. Let's just go ahead and customize every single one of these into Valkyrie stats, and our health can just climb more and more and more. Wish I did copy paste that, and then one more piece here. Let's go ahead and do that, where we now have 6 pieces of ascended gear, the highest stat gear that you can get, tied with legendary gear that all have Valkyrie stats. So that is a ton of stats for us. But alongside that, there are infusions, which are really important for Fractals of the Mist, and also for like in-game like super veteran players trying to like min-max their profession and their build. You can get like 2% more damage through infusions, but that's really not important for us at all. But the more important thing is the unused upgrade slots, where we can go ahead and put runes into here. Now there are a lot of different runes that we can look at. We should look at some thematic ones. We have runes of the Necromancer, I believe is one, which will increase our condition damage and vitality, which is not important for us at all. And then we can go ahead and pick your Reaper, which increases our power, toughness, and precision, which, you know, this one might be actually kind of nice for what I want. And looking at one build that I was looking at, we could look at Dragon Hunter, which increases ferocity and power, but we can swap out the runes, and I think I want to go for something a little thematic and kind of just fun, and probably not really good at all, and it's also only 6 silver, so if we want to swap this out, it really doesn't change anything for us. Let's go ahead and get a superior rune of vampirism, 6 of them specifically, and I can go ahead and just add this to every single one of my armor pieces. We're also getting an achievement for that as well, which I've gotten a few achievements since the last time that I recorded an episode, as I've been doing some stuff in the open world to get map completion as we approach ore, where I completed some dailies, and I also got the Against the Alliance achievement and the Dredge Slayer achievement. But as we throw all of these in, I'm now at 25k health, and I have 1,815 power, which is really, really cool. But now we have the weapons that we can look at, which we have the Berserker's Reaper's greatsword, which is nice, and then we also have this axe and this warhorn. But I do have this ascended weapon chest here, And I was trying to consider which thing I would want. If I would want to wait to get like the Ascended Greatsword later on, which I'm probably definitely going to unlock that no matter what. Which that is a free Ascended item if you wanted it. But it might be nice to have an Ascended Greatsword now if that's going to be the best thing for us, which I think I might do. Maybe I'll regret this, but also in like, 2.5 months or whatever, there'll be a new season where we can get basically a new free Ascended weapon. So let's go ahead, pick this Ascended Greatsword. Just triple checking Ascended Greatsword selected. Let's go ahead and pick that. And then let's go ahead and equip this here. And this is what it looks like. Not very good, but we can then customize the stats. And same thing, we want to be really, really careful with this. But I think I want to go ahead and go the Valkyrie route, where we're at 27k health now, which is really, really cool. And then we can look at sigils as well, but let's come to the trading post really, really quickly. And let's go ahead and buy an exotic axe and an exotic warhorn, where I can upgrade these to Ascended in the future as well. But if you come into the axes, and then same thing as before, we want level 80, we want exotic, and then let's look at power, ferocity, and vitality. And then let's sort by price, where we have a bunch of different options here. Let's pick the Valkyrie Pearl Reaver, which is about 1 gold, and then we can buy a warhorn as well, which let's just get this one. Take all, and then we can equip this here, and then we can equip this here, and then we can see what these look like. Kind of like seashells basically, which is fun. But this is from crafting as well, so you could craft these, or you can buy them for the 1.5 gold that I just spent on them, which now after everything I'm down to 497 gold. What a dent in my wallet. But looking at sigils, there are a ton of sigils that we could buy, and I'm really not 100% sure what ones exactly I even want, but I might go ahead and just spend a lot of gold. So let's look for Sigil of Force, which this is basically like the best power like sigil you can get, which just increases your DPS by a flat 5. And since we have 2 weapon sets, let's go ahead and buy 2. You cannot put 2 of the same sigil in the same weapon set, so we have 1 for each one. And then we could also get, what's the other good one for like power builds? We can look at some more fun stuff in the future. Let's get these sigils of accuracy, which will increase our critical strike chance, which will be nice with our ferocity, where our critical damage is almost double that of a normal attack, which is great. Let's go ahead and apply the superior sigil of force there, and then the accuracy, and then if you come here, do that, and do that. So now we have some pretty good armor with some runes in it, and some pretty good weapons with some runes or sigils in them. So that's pretty good. But now we have the right side. So let's really quickly go over the aquatic stuff, because this is often something that a lot of people overlook, but it's definitely nice to have some good like aquatic headgear and weapons when you are in the water, and we don't really have any aquatic options here. I think we can definitely upgrade this in the future, but let's just buy that for now because we can. But then let's come into our spears here, because we can have a spear and a trident. And then let's search level range, and then let's get the exotic, and then let's get power, ferocity, and once again, say it with me, vitality, and then sort by price, where we have some different options here, but let's go ahead and get that. And then with that, we can get a trident. We cannot use harpoon guns, and we can get that trident there. And then we have everything else here, which let's take a look at some of these options, which I believe are under the armor here. So let's take a look at rings, and I think, oh, we do not have to do that, but we have to put these back in. So power, ferocity, and vitality. And then we have these options here, which these have kind of like weird names, and we can get some ascended stuff in the future, which actually let me double check. I have 137 laurels, and typically there are like a lot of different ways that you can get ascended rings, amulets, and whatnot, and this is absolutely not a recommended method, but I'm not really going to spend my laurels on anything else on this account. I could convert it to gold, and basically one laurel is like 80 silver, but I'm going to go ahead and spend the laurels to buy some stuff here, which if we come to the laurel merchant here, there's a ton of different things we can buy, but we can buy some ascended gear, which just go ahead and look at we have amulets, and then we have rings, and then we have some accessories here, and the accessories actually cost globs of ectoplasm on top of them, and I'll probably just slowly upgrade my ascended gear over time as I take a look at all of this, which actually I could get, what is it? I could get 2 accessories right now. What is that, 40, 80, and then I can get 110, and then yeah, I will need more laurels in the future. So let's actually run back to the trading post really quickly, and let's buy some globs of ectoplasm. I already have some, but I'll just buy the flat 100 I need, which is 31 gold, which I purchased 95, so I guess that's fine. Let's go ahead and pick this up, which will also give us our aquatic gear that we can go ahead and just equip here. So then let's equip our trident, and we could put some sigils in here, but I think I'm just going to leave no sigils, and I'm going to leave no, well, I guess we have a minor rune in here already, increases a little bit of condition damage, but I'm just going to leave all of this as is for now because, you know, it is underwater equipment. You don't use it too often, and I can look at it more in the future. But back to this laurel merchant right here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the amulets first. And a really annoying thing about amulets is that they're not going to show you like the name of the stats, so you really have to kind of like search for the stats specifically. So I'm just going to try to find, they should have Valkyrie options. They don't have all the options because these are from like vanilla, I believe. We do have this like pseudo Valkyrie right here that we could pick, which I actually don't see a Valkyrie option. I might just be missing it, but let's get this bud of the pale tree, which is going to increase our vitality by a little bit. And then if we come down into the ascended gear here for accessories, let's search through this once again. I again don't see those stats, but let's go ahead and pick these 2 up, which you want to pick 2 different things because you can't have 2 of the same ones equipped. So we can get that. And that is all of our laurels for now, and I can get more as I continue completing some weeklies and whatnot. Let's go ahead, equip our new amulets, and then we got 2 new accessories right here, and that is 3 ascended pieces of equipment right there, which is very cool. But now it's time for the final few pieces where I can go ahead and upgrade these more in the future, but I'm going to go ahead and just get some exotic ones for now because we can buy some on the trading post. Let's just go power, ferocity, and vitality, and 80, and then I want exotic. And then let's look at, we need 2 rings. So let's go ahead, get 2 Valkyrie rings right here. Actually, yeah, I think we can have 2 of the same exotic, but not 2 of the same ascended. So let's buy 2 of those. I can sell 1 if that's not the case. And then we need a back item, which I don't think there's really any options for that. Let's just go ahead and just clear this really quickly. And let's take a look at what is available for us, which, can we select stats for this? We can actually select a stat here, which is nice. So let's go ahead and take that. And this is from the Lunar New Year Festival, so I'm just going to customize this. Let's search for Valkyrie. And then we can put an upgrade item into here. So let's look at upgrade components. And let's go ahead and search for level 80. And then exotic. And then what upgrade component do we have in here? Okay, exquisite burrow jewel. I'm really bad at pronouncing that. Let's actually search for that straight up. Or let's go ahead and buy 1 of these just to throw into our back item here. So then we can, equip that, and then we can throw that into there. And then we have 2 rings that we can go ahead and equip here. So there's 1. and then another one. And now that is everything except a relic. Now relics are from the Soto expansion, and if I'm completely honest with you, I'm not entirely sure how you're supposed to get them, because I got 3 on every single one of my characters and then I got a legendary relic. But I noticed we can buy some from the trading post. So if we come into the armor here, do they show up here? They show up right here. So if we sort by price, we have a ton of different options, which if I look at the recommended one, you could get the fireworks one, which basically upon dealing strike damage using a weapon skill with a recharge time of 20 seconds or more, deal increased strike damage for a duration. But we could look at some stuff like Relic of Reaper, chill nearby enemies after executing a shout skill, and we just have so many different options that we could pick, and we can get so many more in the future. I'm kind of thinking maybe Relic of the Adventure, where we gain endurance after using a healing skill. This isn't going to help our damage at all, but it might help us a little bit with survivability. I'm also looking at a Relic of the Water, cleanse conditions from yourself and nearby allies after using a healing skill. We don't have too many Condi cleanse options, so that might be nice to just add an additional Condi cleanse here. So I'm actually thinking maybe that, but we can always swap this out in the future. So let's go ahead and spend almost 19 gold, and we can buy that, and then we can equip that, and that is pretty much a fully decked out character, where we still have more upgrades and whatnot to go, but we are doing pretty well here, and we have almost 30,000 health, and we have 2,500 power, so we are definitely incredibly powerful. Now, really quickly, before we go and test this out for a few minutes and before I end the episode, let's go ahead and just maybe customize our character a little bit, which I don't have too many options, so let's go ahead and just go through everything that we currently have. And maybe we can rock something like this for now until I get some better armor choices, and I'll just hide the pack item there. And then a very important thing we can do is to dye our armor, which, if I'm being honest, I don't completely know I want. Let's maybe throw graphite onto everything. I'm definitely going to change this up in the future, but this is just for now. And then with that, let's pick jalapeno, and let's just pick some options you like to go with the graphite. I want the bottom there, maybe that and that. And this is not my favorite thing in the world, if I'm being completely honest with you, but it's going to suit us well for now, and we are definitely going to upgrade this in the future. But we are like a little jalapeno now, so that's kind of cool. But let's go spend a few minutes in ore and just kill a couple of creatures, just so we can test out this build a little bit. And I'm going to be using this build maybe for the rest of this Let's Play series, for the next 1,000 episodes, who knows. But we'll have plenty of opportunities to experiment with this build, to play a little bit more, and to work on some stuff in the future. This is like a massive greatsword skin. It's kind of funny. But let's go ahead and attack this Risen right here. And we can go ahead and start dealing so much damage with our greatsword. And I already feel pretty good about this. He dealt like pretty much no damage to us, but that was a really good look there. We do have like a small stun here, except it doesn't really say it's a stun. Let's bring out our flesh golem, and then let's try to find like a group of enemies to fight. And where we have help the pack team clear this graveyard. Where let's run up to here maybe. Let's grab this dude's attention, and then let's just try to deal some AoE damage as everything gets knocked back from us. And we now can do some reliable combo skills, and I'm basically just kind of like auto attacking here. And we have this ability which actually breaks stun, which is nice. So we have one stun break there. I don't know how I missed that. And then yeah, we just have so many different like options that we can use here. Let's sneak over here. So use this, that dealt like half the enemy's damage. And of course, core tier mobs are weaker than expansion mobs just because of like the concept of like power creep and whatnot, where they are like designed around what the game was like at that point in time, where a Reaper is much more powerful than a core Necromancer, just like on paper. But you know, there's still a lot of opportunities with core Necromancer and all the different core specializations. But Necromancer with the Reaper specialization just feels so fun. And we still have a bit to go when it comes to our class fantasy idea of like a Death Knight character, since we look kind of just like a scholar out in the field right now, which is a cool vibe. But I'm definitely going to be changing up our build a little bit. Let's come grab this waypoint really quickly, and then we have this hero challenge right over here, which if I get like 2 more hero points I can get the next trait, which I don't think I'm going to do right now, especially since I don't think I want this one. But a veteran here, and he's dealing a decent amount of damage to us. This was our healing ability, and then we can go into our second health here with our shroud. Let's go ahead and just blast all of them. So the flesh golem really just died, and we have like no stun breaks while we are in shroud, which is a little annoying. But we just obliterated that veteran, and I feel pretty good with my options, where it's nice to have all that health with the Valkyrie stats, and we could have toughness so we take less damage, but it feels pretty nice. And as we approach the end of this episode, I want to do one thing really quickly, because I've been exploring all of Tyria, and I missed one area, I believe, in my Let's Play episodes, so I'm going to go ahead and explore that area really quickly. Which if we come back into this area, if I can jump up there, we can look on our map, Tail of the Serpent, which is an area that has no map completion objectives. But I forgot that somewhere around here is the entrance to another area that is on the roadmap but has no map completion objectives. I think if we come up here, we can just work our way to the layer of the coil, which we have now unlocked on the map, and that is the last area that I needed in the Shiver Peak Mountains. So we have completely explored all of that now, which is fun. But through my efforts this episode, we are now much more powerful, and I am excited to go ahead and continue the last steps we have in vanilla Guild Wars 2 as we finish up the personal story and as we finish up road completion, where I hope y'all enjoyed watching this episode. And if you're newer to Guild Wars 2 or just don't understand gearing that well, I hope this video served as a walkthrough for helping you gear up your character. And I feel like we are now pretty powerful, and we do still have a lot to go left on this character as we get some more items and maybe change some stuff up as we face challenges in the open road that we want to navigate around. But I hope y'all enjoyed watching this episode, and I hope y'all are taking good care of yourselves. Remember, as always, to drink some water, check your posture, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time on the Road of Tyria. Goodbye.